Good. Okay, I'm going to move on. We've talked. We heard Joe talking about Google earlier today, and I already had prepared a question I wanted to ask the panel. In your view, why is it that so many of our users turn to Google first instead of going to the help systems that we write using your tools? And is this something we should be concerned about? Is this a problem, or should we embrace it? Dennis?
Sure. I'm sure that this is something that we should all be considered, because Google is a leader in search, and today we don't speak why people use it for search. We speak why people use it for search instead of help files. Usually when people need a help file, when they have a problem, and usual situation is that many help files and manuals and documentation in general don't describe problems. There are no good solutions in help files, and sometimes documentation even hide these problems, don't write about it, and that's why people tend not to trust the documentation. And another point is that sometimes they even try to find the solution, but they can't, because the documentation often written in different language. It may be written in terminology that is used within company by developers or writers, and people may use completely different language for the problem. For example, company may think about DPI, and the user may think just about recite the image, and so it's more comfortable for users to look for a solution in the community where people speak the same language with them. And the best tool to search the solution in the community is definitely Google, because it indexes forums, Twitter, social networks almost immediately, and the solutions there is always up to date and fresh. And the third point is more psychological, I think. People look for not only for solutions, but they also look for assistance and support by other people. They prefer to think that they are not alone, and other people have the same problems, and this may be a more preferable way for them just to refer to help files on, for example, to technical support with the standard boilerplate question answers.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Anyone want to add to what Dennis has said on that?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And people Google because they're not finding the answers anywhere else. And also because they want answers in their own language. They want to find, okay, this is my question. I'm sure somebody else has had this question, and usually they will have had it. And that somebody else is going to describe it in exactly the way I would have written it if I already knew it and was explaining it to them. That's what I want. And you can leverage this with things like user forums. We have a user forum. We now have over 7,000 users and over 40,000 articles. And it doesn't all have to be user-written. I wrote over 12,000 of the articles on the forum. And because there's no way, if you have a complex product, that you're going to be able to sit down and cover all that in your documentation. But if you open yourself up to the users and answer their questions, then you're going to be providing the kind of content that they're looking for on Google. And that gives you a huge plus in terms of user loyalty, user confidence, and on the forum you can talk in their language.
Well, let's open this up. One of the other questions I had was, should users be able to contribute their own help content? And if so, what's the best way to enable them to do this? Ankur, can I ask you to maybe continue where Tim left off and address that question as well?
Sure. So on the point of Google, I want to go back to what I said before. I think it's about helping the right people, getting to the right information through the right medium at the right time. And if that means that they're not able to find the information within the help system, they're likely going to find it through different mediums. And the content could be, again, on blogs, wikis, forums, help content, wherever. But I'm not sure if it necessarily has to be health system versus Google. I don't know if it is necessarily a versus thing.
There's no versus.
It perhaps is, another alternate mechanism today, but who knows? I mean, tomorrow it should be, you have one place to go to and get information from all the different sources right there for you. The information that's relevant for you, perhaps within the health system. And that's part of the reason I'm very excited about some of the new community health that are coming up, including the Adobe Community Health, because it allows users to not only search for the information that is there within the health system, but also what is there in the external sources. And moving on, taking the same to the user-generated content, I think it's again an excellent example of where users can contribute content, and I think it's a great approach. I met with some of the customers recently. A classic example was where people start with 30% of the content, which means they don't author the entire content. I'll start with 30%, and then I work with my end users to make it 100%. And our users are so effective, they'll tell us what are the more important things for them. They talk about the things that are more relevant, and these content could be from different means. Social media is picking up, and I think it's just a great approach to embrace and also engage with the audience this way. They all feel more engaged, involved in the way they are contributing to the content, and then they have that sense of belongingness, I think, which is a great thing to have in lockdown.
Mike?
Sure. Again, on the Google lead-in, I would agree completely. It does not have to be a versus. We have to realize that our crystal ball is only so good, and users are going to encounter problems that we didn't even realize. And that's where the Google becomes powerful. And also, a lot of documentation I read is still based on kind of feature X, or what I would call buttonology, rather than process or task. And that's where people are going to go straight to Google and try and find, okay, who has had this problem trying to do this process or this task before. So it could be an indication that maybe we need to look at how we're writing. As far as community involvement, that is one of those, I'm a big proponent of it, but it has to add value. So if you're documenting something that's like open source software, then something like a wiki may be perfect because you need the community involved. On the other hand, you may be in an environment where the documentation is controlled for legal reasons, but you still may want to have some of that community involvement, so maybe something more blog style is appropriate. Or if you're documenting, a medical device, well then it has to be controlled content. So I think, is community involvement good? Absolutely, as long as it adds value. And then I think it's almost a responsibility these days to add community involvement. But to what level depends on what we need.
Okay. Martin, how about you? How do you think we can enable users to get more involved in the documentation process?
Well, I kind of disagree a little bit on the Google thing.
Good.
I think every time someone leaves your website or your product and goes to Google, you've got the potential of losing that customer. I think as soon as they start Googling, they might find a competitor that maybe has better documentation. They can kind of see the features and differentiators of that product. And even if it's not better than your product, maybe it's communicated better than your product documentation. So I think we've got to be concerned about people going to Google. And I kind of agree with some of the comments about communities, but I think you've got to create your own community around your own product, so that you do get that groundswell of enthusiasm about your documentation and your product, so that people can gather the information that they want. I don't think people are happy to be sold products anymore. They just want to gather all the information that's out there and then make their own decision. So I think they really, I think it's our responsibility to get that information out there so that they can make an informed choice about the product.
Okay, thank you. Yesterday, sorry, Dennis, yeah, go ahead.
Just a couple of points. Just a couple of points about user-contributed content. I'd like to emphasize some problems or issues maybe related to this. User-contributed content will be a great challenge and additional responsibility for you, for your moderation. If you allow people to add their comments or values to your help system or to your online documentation wiki, you are responsible to moderate it, because there are many challenges, starting from simple hijacking and spam, and advertisement of competitors disclosing big problems or weakness of your software, and for example, what is called holy wars is a conflict of interests and conflicts of authors. You may see this in wiki, where these wars go constantly. So keep it in mind.
Yeah.